first up, we have Tyler James Bridges, aged out in 2014, I believe. We have Connor Yasuda, aged out in 2015.
What's up?
Aging out in 2019, we have David Ramirez.
17 fool.
Hello.
Oh, 19.
We have aging out in 2020, we have Cameron, Will, and Chase Parks.
Ooh. Howdy.
Old boys.
And the youngin' of the group, aging out in 21, I believe. Zach, confirm?
Huh? 22.
22. Oh, my Lord.
Oh, no, 21. Sorry.
It's Zach Wilson.
It's
Giving
21.
the people hope.
It's 21.
Yes.
Good way to start, Zach. So right off the bat, you look around here and the backgrounds are extremely different. We have two people who marched SUV. We have a Cavalier. We have a guy from Mandarins, some Blue Coats, a Blue Star. What are the advantages of having so many drummers from so many different places? And what are some of the challenges? Let's go with Cameron first.
I would say like the comparison of technique from Mandarins to Pulse. I would say like it gives me a lot of edge in terms of teaching. Like I can kind of work my way around different things in different ways, which I think is pretty handy. Like experiencing, I would say Pulse a lot more rebounded and like relaxed touch versus Mandarins where there's a lot more weight to it. Going from school to school where the technique may be different, if I'm teaching under a different caption head or it's my school, I can do kind of what I wish. And I feel like I'm more flexible with that.
Is there like a grace period where you have to like remember how to play with each other again?
To me,
To any of you?
yes, I would say yes.
Yeah.
How long does that usually take?
I think it
I
depends.
mean, I think it depends on.
Until finals.
I think largely it kind of depends on the group of people and how long you've known each other and how similar your education has been up to a certain point. But in my experience, it's normally only been a couple of weeks at most, and then obviously refining everything until finals.
And Chase, as you and oh man, I'm blanking, but you moved all the way here.
Yeah.
With a bunch of guys who had been playing together for a few seasons. Did it take longer for you? Did it feel like the rest of the guys kind of figured it out before you did?
A little bit, I think, and a lot of that I think was just mostly due to the tilt, because I'd always played on a flat drum and it felt super weird, especially like once we got on the move. It was like, I don't know why, but this just felt super weird and like off center almost. So it was just, I did feel like it took probably honestly like through December until I felt super comfortable behind the drum, moving and playing the whole time. But just to kind of gel like within the line, it didn't really take that long. I mean, I think this was a really solid group to kind of just jump in with, and there was a lot of really good sounds happening obviously on the inside, so it was pretty easy to latch on to.
And for the other guys, speaking about like the tilt and going back and forth from tilt to flat, Chase only had to go from flat to tilt once, but the rest of us have gone back and forth a few times. What are like the biggest challenges of having to kind of translate your skill set back and forth? Connor, let's go with you.
I mean, drumming on a flat drum and then going to like a tilted drum. I did the transition once, and that was like my age out when I went from 2014 Coats to 2015 Pulse, from flat to tilt one more time. And like the only thing that really helped was like it was like that much easier to hit left hand shots. But I don't know if that was because that's all I did all summer was just hit left hand shots for Vortex. But I think honestly, that's like the only thing I really noticed. I started on a flat drum when I first started learning, or when I first picked up snare, for like one season. And then that was fall season. And then immediately the next winter we went to a tilt. So I think the only like real transition we had that I was told when I was, still marching and being taught was just like, hey, relax your right arm and just let your left hand do what it wants to do. And then my hands look like Garbo for like a whole season. And then like I kind of got used to it afterwards.
And from the instructor side, how does your approach to teaching change depending on tilt or flat?
Oh, I personally, whenever people ask me like, well, what should I do different if I'm drumming on a tilt versus drumming on a flat drum? And like the biggest thing I say is like, if you're asking that question, you're already overthinking it. Don't overthink it. Just play. Let your hands rest where they want to. If you're gonna be drumming on a tilted drum, yeah, your right hand might move at a certain angle that it's not necessarily used to, or you may have to get used to how your drum is or where your drum is relative to you in 3D space and stuff like that. But the moment you start making excuses saying like, oh, well, the tilt's kind of throwing me off, then for me, I'm like, all right, you're dial it back a little bit. I think you're maybe overthinking it, and it's not going to help you in the long run if you're freaking out about a tilt. Like it's not that big of a deal.
Now, David.
Yes.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I think David spent the most time within the Pulse organization. You spent 5 years?
Yeah. I spent 5 years. I did 3 years at POW, 2 years at POW and then 3 years at Pulse.
How did you feel, specifically your 3 years at Pulse? Like, did you feel like culture change over those years, and like in what ways and how drastically?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, every year was just like pretty radically different. I think a lot of that had to do with like, different leadership styles, at least I can only really speak from like my personal experience, but at 17, I kind of made the line like by the skin of my teeth. So the kind of like my entire goal that season was to just like do the best I can, keep my head down and just work and work and work. And in 2018, I think was definitely like for me to like, march a second year with a lot of like my homies. And it was definitely like a little bit of an easier time. Still feel like I had to have that work ethic, to keep elevating, the level of the Pulse snare line, the level of the Pulse battery. Definitely still felt that work ethic the second year. But then in 2019, like it just felt like pretty solid because like, me and Christian Hansen, we had been there for 3 years together, and we kind of like used our previous experience in the past 2 years. Like, okay, what didn't we like? What did we like in 17? What didn't we like? What didn't we like in 18? And then because we had both been there for so long and we had so many people like around us supporting us, 19 was definitely like, we got like, man, like really changed like our work habits, like, like simple things like showing up to rehearsal on time. Like I remember we weren't the best at that in 17 as an entire ensemble. And every year just got a little bit better. So,
which one of those years was your favorite to perform show wise?
I actually get that question a lot, and it's always tough to know how to answer it because I kind of like every show. Every show is my favorite for like a different reason. Like 2017, like a lot of people come up to me, like a lot of like my students or other fans or people that see me perform, they'll still come up to me and say like, oh, 2017 was like my favorite Pulse show ever. It's like, oh, it's really close to being like my favorite WGI show of all time. And like when I look back at it, it like kind of seems like not real. I was like, man, I was in the Uninvited. Like that is like a really cool show. But you look at it with such a different perspective because like I'll watch the video with somebody who's like really enjoying it. I'm like, oh yeah, that ticked. That was wrong. Oh, I remember everything that was wrong with this part. Oh, I remember how hard this part was to do. So I have like a totally different perspective than obviously like the people who are huge fans of the finished product. But I still really loved it. The production was awesome. The music was great. It was, kind of like an iconic show now. 2018 was just like an amazing experience, like just like the kind of group that we had, the people that we had was so tight knit. The show was very like emotional and required a lot of us to be like on the same like wavelength and level of like, our insecurities, because the show's about like walls and stuff and letting our guard down. And so we had to let our guard down around the entire group. And that made it memorable because, it became a really emotional show. Every run through we did was very, very emotional. And that's how I'll always remember that. For 2019, I just remember like, that's one of my favorite books to play. And it was one of my favorite lines to play in because I felt like by the end we were playing like so clean. There's like a video I like to watch again. I think it's by like 6 a.m. Films, or I think this is on Instagram. Like it's like shot from the side at finals when it's dark and there's like that one light from the truck. But I still think that run through in the lot was so clean, and I'll never forget that. David,
what about hands? Don't you like hands?
Well, yeah, we can talk about the PAL shows too. Andrew asked me about the Pulse show. Yeah, I love my time at PAL too as well. People love talking about the hands show. It's just, it's a fun one.
I think as performers, speaking about shows, how you as a performer appreciate a show and how an audience will appreciate a show are sometimes very vastly different. And I am sure that we've all been in shows that we probably thought were a little underappreciated. For anybody here, like, what's a show that you thought that, or you had a blast performing, but you felt like maybe didn't quite hit the mark on the audience side?
I would agree with David for 2018. I think a lot of the ensemble saw that show, especially like even you, Andrew, like I'm sure like a lot of people that were involved in that show definitely we were very connected to it emotionally. Like we even got together multiple times and like talked about the show as sections, as an ensemble, just so much. Like we were so invested that I think that was why that's the season that would stick out to me as being underappreciated. I think a lot of people still loved it, but we just loved it so much because of what we put into it. So then at the end of the day, I think it's kind of hard to expect the audience to go through what you had to go through for that show to work, I guess you could say. So that's the one for me, I would say, is underappreciated, but only by, I would say, more of the community rather than us. I think that show will always hold a special place in everyone who marched for that year. So
Tyler?
Oh no, put me on the spot. That's a toughie. Probably 2013, because that was definitely a weird one for another battery. We got 5th place, so that was kind of unexpected. It was a really, really good start to the season. It was super fun to perform. It was really high energy, and don't get me wrong, I had a really great time that season. But yeah, that one I felt was underappreciated.
How so?
It was pretty vulgar, I thought. And we've heard that from some of the judges, I remember, on the tapes. So it was kind of cool to like, kind of like what Zach said. It was like within the ensemble, I thought we all bought into it. But from the outside, it was not everyone understood 100%, especially the judges, which is okay. It didn't come across 100%, which is fine. But yeah, that was a year for me.
And don't forget about the tear, Tyler.
What tear?
That tear movement too.
Oh, really?
Wait, no one knows about that though.
yeah. Tell
That's what it's supposed to sound like, right? Huh.
John Mapes isn't watching.
And that book in 2013 was hard.
Yeah, it was a lot of stuff. And there was a lot of snares. We had 9 that year.
Yeah, when you're looking at a book, like when you think back at the books that you enjoyed the most, was it the difficulty that you thought it was, like, that you enjoyed the most? Was it like maybe thematic clarity, like with the show? Was it like the ups and downs of like musicality wise?
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the music was never like super like, oh my gosh, this is really, really, really challenging. I like how it like flows all together like one full story. But when you add all the layers of, doing all the drill and then doing all the body and then combining that with like a performance, like an emotional performance, adding all those layers on top of each other is what makes it really fun to me. And that's what makes it more challenging and interesting. I think the moments where it's like more challenging, usually like snare solos, it's like, all right, beef it up, add some, tricks, high moms or whatever, to spice it up. But yeah, for me personally, I kind of just like the whole shebang, not too crazy the whole entire time, but not like super boring the whole time. Kind of like a little wow factor in the middle.
Will, what are you looking for in a book?
Usually the overall like production value, not like, yeah, I guess the overall like production value of how all the parts fit in with each other. like those books are my favorite, you know, because there are like some books where I played. It's like, okay, this part's cool, that part's cool, and that part's cool, and like that's about it. And then there have been other books where it's been like everything is just the full ensemble is just awesome, you know, every moment, you know. So those are like the stuff that stick out to me, you know. There's never a dull moment.
Does that come from like interplay between battery instruments, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, even the front ensemble too. Like that makes a big difference. And like us as battery people, I feel like front ensemble music is something that's always overlooked too. You know. Yeah.
What about everybody in terms of some of your favorite books? Maybe tell us what they are. What about them? What made it your favorite? Start with Chase.
A lot of books.
Doesn't have to be exclusive to Pulse, because obviously you've only played one.
A lot of books.
A lot of books.
I think my favorite book that I've played in outdoor in Cavaliers 2017, Men Are From Mars. I think that was a really cool book because there was a lot of open space and open rhythmic interpretation in there, whereas not always super fast, aggressive tempos, but it was very rhythmically dense, even though it may have been a more manageable tempo. So there was a lot of control in it and a lot of thought that had to go into playing your part perfectly. And then listening back to it, even 2-3 years later, it's, in my opinion, I think it's just a really musical piece overall. And the way Mike wrote some of the battery parts, really interesting. Like for the intro, he intentionally wrote only snares and quads. We had, like, the bass line wasn't involved in our intro. We had an entire snare feature later on in our second movement that had no rim shots or stick tricks at all in it. It was just rhythms on a drum head. And it's just not something that you see very often. And I think it was really interesting how he wrote all of that different stuff while almost restricting himself. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. But looking at it, it's like, oh, hey, here's the music, learn it. And then seeing the product on the other end, I always thought that was kind of cool. And for indoor, I don't know. I've done a lot of different styles during indoor, and it's kind of hard to choose. But I think I would have to say United 2018 would have been one of my favorites. It was a really fun book to play. It was really challenging. There was a lot of very complex rhythmic ideas and a lot of really intricate, like, stick tricks within that rhythmic concept that Paul wrote in there. And I also, specifically from a battery standpoint, I think it was one of the most musical percussion books that I've ever played. Even though it was so dense, there was so much micro shaping and so many very specific shot colors and textures that were placed in certain places for really specific reasons.
David?
Yeah, I always really enjoyed the books over the summer at Blue Stars that Eric Shriver wrote. He has like a really good blend of like really dense, like in your face musical passages, but then also has like him and like opening it up and play it with a lot of space. Like I remember the drum break from my age out year in 2018 was like, it was very difficult to learn at first because I was like, well, I've never like played like a drum break this, like it felt like the tempo was slow, like it wasn't like the 190 kind of drum break, but it was also had like a lot of density and a lot of like rhythmic complexity too. That was really difficult to play and play as a line as well. So yeah, I always enjoy the Eric Shriver books.
Cam?
You say Cam?
Yeah.
Are these, do I have to have played these books, or can I give shout outs to some books that I have not played, but I also like? Because I'm definitely a big Tom Rarick fan. I'm a huge fan of those books. Like 2013 and 2019 are two of my favorites. In terms of books I've played, I liked like a big thing that attracted me to Pulse was John's beats. Like they feel really good to play. Like I'd get my hands on like a lick in high school and be like, man, that's really fun. And then I would also say like I played 3 years of Darren Vanderpool, his beats at the Sacramento Mandarins. And I feel like his style, at least to me, was very unique. It wasn't really like anything else that I had played before. I feel like he just the way he treats like the different voices, as in snares, tenors, bass, like they're completely I feel like they're very independent as voices, and I'm also a big like composition nerd. That's what I'm studying in school. So like I'm into like the full ensemble stuff as well in terms of being a listener.
Zach.
I definitely agree with Cameron on Tom Rarick. Like he's written so many good, like there's a lot of years that I really appreciate. Bluecoat's 2012 especially is one of them. I just think it's 2012 and 2010 had something special because I just think like, I think someone brought it up earlier, but like there's certain books, like it's not necessarily, I think it was Tyler, it's not necessarily that it's the most challenging, but it has like the full package. Like a lot of Tom Rarick stuff sometimes can be even simple. Like if you compare it to like certain groups will just ram notes, which is totally fine. And if it's clean, it's awesome. But then like sometimes comparison, like Tom Rarick will have like very simple things. Like it's just eighth note hockets, a couple 16th notes in there. And like, that's like how the phrase builds. And like, I feel like stuff like that, like I just love to appreciate the nuance of books, especially the simple parts. I think that's one reason I love Pulse too, is because if you look at one section, you might go like, wow, that's not the hardest thing in the world. But then like when you look at what everyone's playing, especially with Pulse books, especially like I love the way John builds a phrase. It's not even like the impact, like here's what we ram. It's like everything up to that is just so cool to listen to and to play. Especially like this last season, we had like a pass around, like the first phrase, it was just like a circle up into like this first circle form, and just the passing around, it was like, it was so fun just to listen to and be in that moment. So I would say outdoors, Blue Coast 2012 or like Phantom 2010, just simple, but they have their moment. Indoor, honestly, if I were to say, it's like 2011 Pulse is one of the most, I love that show. I love the beats for that show because that's another one where they play just a lot of notes too. It's like the other side of the coin. It's like, wow, that is so many notes. The 7-stroke rolls in the end too. It's like just so clean, which I love too. So,
Honor,
Sammy.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. It's weird because it's been a while since like Tyler and I marched. You know, we've been out of the activity for a while, so like I kind of have two perspectives on it. Like when I was marching, I think the most fun show that I'd been a part of was like probably 2014. I don't think it was like underrated, maybe a little bit overrated, but every time I look back, like right before we did this, I was looking back at some of those old videos and I found like lot videos of us playing and, you know, we're smiling, goofing around, having a good time. And, you know, just like we're messing around. We're like yelling during the show, we're high-fiving, doing all this stuff. When we start playing, our faces are still going. We're still smiling and cheesing it up and screaming and making goofy faces. And I look back on that, I think like, did I really have that much fun? I'm like, when I think about it, I was way more focused. And I think that was just like a testament to our tech staff was them being able to elicit this response during the most menial rehearsals where we're dead tired and we're just kind of over it. It's hot, we're thirsty, and we're still, you know, being pushed to perform because that's all we have to know how to do by the very end of the day. But I think that was one show that, the book itself didn't really feel that hard. The visual package was really tough. But I think the one thing that I really liked about that show was that it just it worked. I was able to stay engaged with it because, we do these shows for 8 months out, and you want to have a show that can stay relatively interesting for both the audience, but mostly for the members. And that kind of comes from like the other perspective after, not marching for 5 years now. And like Tyler, you've got 6 years, like after teaching a little bit more and seeing the other side, going into critique and finding out what makes a show get points and what earns points and, gets a good response from the judges and the audience. And it's mostly just that thematic clarity. Does the show make sense? Does it tell a good story? And is it interesting enough to stay refreshing over a long period of time, especially for the people who are going to be playing through it for, 10 hours a day through the entire weekend for 8 whole months straight.
Did you ever feel fatigued by playing that 14 book? You ever feel tired of it?
Go
for Tyler or Connor.
Okay, there was one time, Tyler, I don't know if you remember this. We when we were in Dayton, we had to rep that one chunk that we did. We go upside down at the very end, and we had to play that chunk. And normally we just did one and done. Like we always repped it on the whole chunk because it's show day. We have to chunk through everything. So there was one time where we're like, all right, let's rep it as a little like set or subs in the middle of ensemble for 3 minutes. So we played through the whole thing, and then I think it was like Manny was like, all right, leave the mat running. Let's get one more on that. We'll do that next one, no mat. And we're like, wait, we're still up here. Can we get down, please? And it's like, no, it's fine. We'll just do one more. So we're still hanging upside down for like maybe 10 minutes straight. And by the very end of it, I'm like super lightheaded. My ears are like the blood's going to my head. Like my vision starts getting dark and I can't hear anything. And I'm like, I don't know if it's clean or not. And like, as soon as we were done, we're just screaming and we're falling off the cages. We're like, oh my God, this sucks. I can't tell what's going on.
Oh man.
Did you guys know that you'd be jumping upside down at the show reveal?
There is one video that we have. Tyler, I know you like tried to demonstrate like a way that we could go upside down. Do you remember that?
Yeah, there's a picture I sent to Matt, like one of the first times we went upside down. I don't know if you can show that real quick. Sure. It's funny because even
we didn't even know how to like hold the drum. We didn't have the brackets or anything.
Yeah, I was like, before this we had
wearing sandals.
Yeah, I was wearing flip flops.
The chunks.
Yeah, dude. We didn't even have like the carriers for the drums yet, and I think that was the first day we got the cages because before then we were using PVC piping. That was just like a square on the ground.
That was a wreck.
Did anyone try to hang off of those?
They weren't even like cages. They were like quite literally like flat squares of PVC. Just it's like it was there to show the footprint, but like we go through rehearsals and like not all the visual ensembles there. So we like John would have to move some props just so we could do a full run, and like these squares are falling apart. Like we couldn't even rehearse with them or do full runs because they'd just break and shatter in the middle of a run. And we're like, all right, well, now what? I don't know what to do.
Speaking on that, what are some disaster stories in the middle of a performance, and how did you recover your way out of them? Anybody?
Oh,
I have one.
Go for it.
There was, I wish I had a GIF. It's super old, so it probably wouldn't look good. But in 2013, there was like a mosh pit section at the end. It was like movement 3, and we just like jammed out, and it was like a mosh pit. And then my drum fell off in the performance. And I don't know. I didn't remember what I was thinking. But I just picked it up and I like threw it over my head and screamed really loud and like snapped it back into place, and somehow I got back into spot. But that was like one of my freak out moments. I was like, oh no, my drum.
Chase, it looked like you had one.
Yeah, it was 2018 at United, and I don't have a video of it, unfortunately. It might be somewhere on YouTube. I don't know. I think it was the Toms River, like East Power Regional that year. We had this moment where we had these big, huge light poles, and we put them into the JLARs on the drums, and we were in pairs doing all this stuff. And we had this split buzz section. Some people were playing like just like a straight triplet buzz, and other people were playing like a double stop quarter note triplet thing. I actually hit one of my sticks on the way down instead of instead of the drum. I dropped the stick, not thinking about the fact that I had a sticks in. Right after that, I picked up another stick, went and did a sticks in, and missed the bag. So I dropped 2 sticks in the span of I think 3 or 4 seconds. And the next thing that we played was the snare feature. And we're all facing backfield. It was just basically just scatter drill. There were no checkpoints. There was nobody that I could latch onto and grab a stick from. So actually the guy that was in the front of the snare break form, he'd seen it happen. So as we turned around to face the front again, he tossed a stick behind his back to me. And I was so scared because I thought I was going to drop another stick, but I ended up catching it. And you can actually hear the crowd reaction on the video. It was the worst 30 seconds of my life. It ended up being cool.
I think Jackson sent that video in the snare chat.
He may have. I don't know.
I remember seeing something like that, but I have to dig in pretty deep.
Yeah, probably.
So when Connor was talking about the physical demand of a book and how that's a big factor of making it interesting, do you think that physical demand is factored enough into difficulty just in general?
Are you asking based on like scoring wise or the
Yes.
community opinion? Okay.
Both.
Okay. I would think in scoring, I think most of the time, then again, I don't get all the scores myself because I'm not the staff member. So maybe Connor and Tyler could answer better, but I feel usually I hear that it's not always put into consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's usually not to bash on any judges, but it's usually older men,
Yeah.
or women that are judging and have been out of the activity for a while. So I feel like them trying to imagine what it's actually physically as a full ensemble and individually, I'm not 100% confident that's always considered, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. I think I talked to Matt Regla about he watched the show in Dayton for 2018. And I remember he talked to me, and the first thing he said was that show, he's the geography and how you guys were trying to communicate and dead across the floor. David, if you remember, and Cameron from the, the closer, the 4 snares are running across, 4 in the front, 4 in the back, just trying to attack together. Stuff like that. He noticed and he's I can't believe you guys pulled it off. Stuff like that is if anything, that might get put down because it's that's weird drill. Stuff like that might even get put down versus be rewarded. Why wow, that's really hard to actually come in together. It might just say that kind of looks weird instead of all the effort that went into attacking. So
what are some of the wackiest listening situations you've been in?
Oh,
well, every single year, I feel almost every single year of Pulse that I marched, there's always the 220 backwards wrap around where we're just gonna follow the leader. That is always a disaster to be in the middle of. It looks really cool. When you look at the video, it's wow, that's what why it's written that way. But when you're in it, it's just so scary, especially when you first learn it, and you're just booking it. That's a hard listening situation because you have people you're listening back, and then all of a sudden you're the listening situation, and then you move back forward. And it's just scary. We had someone fall in 2018, and then Adam Sanchez fell. I tripped someone in 2017. That's a funny story too, because I couldn't see where I was going, and I stepped on their foot, and then we just tumbled. But and that's like usually like one of the last things in the show. Like if you've seen more than a few Pulse shows, it's usually like the closers, like the high octane, super fast, just get in your face, and it goes all the way till the end. That last fall of the leader is usually one of the last things. So if some disaster strikes, that's like the end of the show for you.
That was after the pizza in 2018, right?
Yeah, that was after the pizza.
Don't want to explain the pizza thing?
Cameron's got this.
I don't even know where it started. It became a meme. I wasn't able to transfer the video, but I think my fondest memory of the pizza, I have two of them, where we're at Zach Wilson's house. The whole snare line crashed there for, was it WGI West? Because that was way closer than Christian's house.
Yeah.
So we were there, and your parents weren't home, right?
Yeah.
So we were kind of joking around, being like, "Oh yeah, like no parents party, like let's yell and stuff." And it kind of got a little quieter, and our good boy that we've mentioned a couple times, Adam Sanchez, at the top of his lungs in Zach's house yells pizza. And I feel like it's so obscure and goofy, but it kind of became a big joke. And it's also like it was probably 2:30 in the morning at that point, like because that was after a Friday night rehearsal, right? Like it was sometimes stupid late, so we're all tired. But we ended up putting in the show as a vocal during the final quad break. We're all in the circle around the strings while the quads are over here doing their thing, and we yell pizza. And it's definitely audible on the finals video.
Oh yeah.
we got in a bit of trouble once a certain someone could hear it from the box during rehearsal.
Because it was in 19 and then 20 as well.
Oh yeah, we put pizza in 19 as well.
Well, 20 we put in a whole different vocal.
That was, some people said pizza, other people said something else, but
yeah.
Oh, I'm talking. Well, yeah, we unsheathed our sticks.
Yeah, I think the pizza vocal has been in every Pulse show at least since 2016. I wasn't there in 2016, so I don't remember where it was. But in 17, the part of the show when like with like the telephone and stuff, when the quads are playing their break and we're doing like all this like vision in the back, we definitely said pizza. So it's been in like every single year, and it's kind of like a running gag to say it during the quad solo.
It was in 19 too.
Is the original like pizza meme, is that from the Gimme Pizza Slowed Down? Is that like,
I don't know. I feel like it could be.
Which chicken or the egg? I like,
yeah.
Because I remember now that you're talking about 17, Pow, we put pizza in 2017 as well. I think it was during the closer quad break.
You just got to show those quads. Just got to show them what's what.
Got to cheer them on. So in those situations where you're at 220 and you're going and you're booking it somewhere, how do you prevent your rolls from getting too tense and while maintaining that quality?
I would say you just don't. I think when you get that fast, the idea is you just don't over articulate usually, especially if you're playing any sort of roll at that tempo. Even an eighth note roll is going to be like a slow triplet roll. So therefore you probably just can't over articulate at that point. It's got to be more about like wrist turn motion and not like, it's not like squeezing the stick too much, but you can't use your fingers and articulate so much. So that's probably the way I would do it.
Well,
I think personally I found it's like a strength thing. Like, I guess to elaborate, like, I feel like it took me a long time to where I like just me slamming rolls for a very long time until I had the strength to be able to think about relaxing. And then like on the 220 thing, like it took me a long time to have the core strength and the leg strength to be able to march well enough to where I didn't have to worry about like what my upper body, and I could just worry about playing.
There's an analogy that we use at the high school that I teach at, and it's essentially like, if you think about having your lower half of the body be the athlete and the top half of your body be the artist, you're supposed to separate the athlete from the artist, right? So your lower body's doing all this crazy drill, whatever, but you should still stay relaxed, like in the hands, whatever it is, whatever instrument you play, in order to be able to just play as if you're standing still, you know, having that like control to separate the two. That's an analogy that we use. It's pretty cool.
Connor? Is it
still about
agreement
the
or
roles?
Yeah? I remember you talked about roles a lot.
Yeah, dude, this is a shout out Nick Nation for asking that question. I think roles really comes into just I mean, a little bit is like strength and chops. It's wrist strength. Can you still keep it relaxed? Can you separate your muscles? Can you separate the digits of your fingers, keeping a relaxed touch with your fingers while still being able to get that wrist up? So that way your hands aren't just dying out and you're losing all the rebound from the drum that you need. One guy that I worked with, David Ware, Zach, you might remember this because I don't remember. He mentioned some quote. I'm like, I didn't know how to say it until he said it, but I'm like, all right, that's a really good way to put it. But he just mentioned the ratio between like wrist and arm whenever we're playing roles to get good quality versus speed. I think he said something about like using as much wrist as the tempo will allow until you really start using that arm motion to get that speed in there without losing overall quality. I think that's probably the best way to really put it. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying, but like I wasn't able to sum it up into something as simple as that. But yeah, wrist strength, separation of the individual muscles, and knowing when to switch between the different parts of those muscles from arm, wrist to finger, depending solely on speed. So that way you can still maintain quality no matter what.
So the last big question I want to ask everybody is about kind of considering the term crank, and specifically how I know Zach and you and I have talked about this at great length, but especially Tyler and Connor, as you've been around this organization and how it's changed, how do you think like our idea of the crank has changed? How do you think the members have implemented it differently?
Shout out to Mo.
Yeah, I don't know. For us, it was like definitely a thing from Mo or Moises Urena. He marched a bunch of places. He did like SUV, SCVC. He did cadets.
Academy.
He did academy. But that guy, I mean, I don't know if anybody that's watching knows him, but yeah, that guy was on a whole different level. Like taking water breaks with his drum on all the time. Go to the bathroom with his drum on sometimes.
On the toilet while hacking through eights.
Yeah, so he was like the definition of like crank. Like he would be ready to go before staff members were, and kind of like a meme in a sense, like that kind of just like bled into the rest of the ensemble. Like, yeah, let's freaking crank. We're just gonna crank so hard, and you know, that's kind of how it started for us. I don't know how it's evolved over the years though.
Yeah, I think it's
you say that because it's definitely still alive. Like in 2019, we had that one set where it was like push the step and we get there and stand in that one pose. Like,
yeah.
Not even,
I could never balance long enough for staff to catch up.
Yeah, and then the whole like I know for sure like Zach and I always kept our drums on for water breaks, and like a couple other guys too on the line. That was it. So it's still there. It's crazy.
What about the conscious crank, Zach?
I think that just like, because I've talked to like, I know certain people, like I have said the word crank, like I know at Coates, like there's certain people I've said it and their reaction is like that's not a great way to rehearse. And I think it's because, and that's why we talked about conscious crank, is because it's like with anything, you're not just like, you're doing it to build muscle memory, but it's like, if you're not thinking about it, you're just like, you can't just be in go mode and not think. Cause then like once you get into a show and like a real show situation happens, you have to recover something. It can't just be like, you know, actually trying to be applicable. I think that's why, like, I think like going off what Connor was saying, it's like the crank from the members standpoint is like, especially like for me and Will, it was like, we just wanted to reset as quick as possible so that we can just keep the momentum going. That's like my big thing too, is like, I just love having consistent momentum. And I feel like if you are trying to crank and you're trying to move quicker and just get water, come right back. Like I think having that momentum is kind of crank enough at times and rehearsing. And then the conscious part of that is just like making sure you're not just like, okay, reset, let's just do it again and don't think about it. Like you have to kind of it's like you go, and then sometimes with the reset, it's like, okay, let's talk about something. Let's just not just do it again and like we got to, like Connor talks about this all the time. It's like, if you keep trying to just change it on your own, like it's just going to tick in a different way, or it'll just keep ticking. It's like, you got to keep going, but at some point you have to discuss and think and talk about it together. I think that's kind of like, that's like also the hardest balance to have while marching in a rehearsal, is just like going super hard, but also being able to like go like, okay, real quick, what is going on for this, instead of like, let's just do it again and tick again. Like, well, we'll just do it again. So
yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a thing about what goes on during or amidst the show while you're performing or while you're playing through the book. A lot of that kind of comes down to the rehearsal style. If you call it crank, that's to me, that means that you are, I guess you're not really sitting still. You always ask yourself the question, if there's something I could be doing to be getting better, is there something I could be doing right now? Is there any reason for me to relax? Is there a reason for me to sit still? Because if not, if I could be getting something done right now, if I could be getting better at this one part, or I could be taping my stick so that way I'm prepared to show up to the lot for the next part, or in like my position, can I take the snares to go rep something real quick, while the quads are figuring out how to play tempo well. Like, it's when it comes down to the rehearsal style, I guess crank just refers to that unrelenting drive to push no matter what. And like, as Zach said, I think that's one thing that's changed over the years, was being way more mentally engaged to know what you're doing, and providing a reason as to why you're doing everything, a reason to rep it again, a reason to move on to something else, maybe a reason to stop playing before it's gotten to the clarity that it needs to be at. As long as there's a reason and you have something to do, then you can find solace knowing that you can find fulfillment in whatever task you're trying to accomplish, whether you're repping something a million times to get muscle memory, or whether you're trying to take the project in a completely different path, so that way you do disrupt that muscle memory and you're learning how to get better through that change.
That is that's a good segue into one of the questions we have from the audience. Bear Native asked, what are the best ways to lead a high school drumline as a section leader?
Ooh. I could give like a quick answer. I've had a couple high school section leaders who know exactly what they're doing, and they've had good leadership, and they've wanted to be in this position, and they've looked up to maybe some people in Pulse or people in RCC saying like, oh, I want to do that. Sometimes they just get it. They just know like, in my free time, I could be doing this, or I could be doing this. In my case, sometimes I'll have a section leader that may not know exactly what to do, and I will help them out. Sometimes I'll spoon feed them and be like, hey, you guys should go, stretch right now instead of sitting down, and like all the high schoolers are just sitting in a circle, they're doing their butterfly stretch and that's it. And they're all sitting down, and you're like, hey, you should tell them to go run. It doesn't necessarily need to come from me, because when it comes from the section leader, I think it means a lot more. But for those who don't really know what they could be doing to make their own section better, without stepping on anyone's toes, honestly, the best way is just to, look at the people that look up the people that you hold highest, see what they do, how do they rehearse, what do they treat super special, what do they hold in high regard, and just replicate.
Chase, do you have any leadership advice?
I think especially for like a high school section leader, the biggest thing would be getting experience yourself. That's something that helped me a lot, was going to so many different auditions and drumming with different people, is just watching YouTube videos and going to shows over the summer, just seeing how, kind of like Connor said, seeing how other people do it, seeing how everything works. And, when you go to like a higher level audition, like if you're going to like a top 6 group over the summer to audition, look at all the vets that show up to those camps and say, okay, how do they carry themselves? How do they do this? What are their interactions with the staff members like? And that's kind of stuff that you want to kind of pick up, find the things that you like, combine things that you don't like, kind of filter it in and make your own kind of leadership style, drawing off of all that extra information that you're getting.
Thank you, Dylan Wed, for that question. And a question from Vitor Rodriguez. What are some ways to improve as a performer?
Use a mirror for more than just your drumming. I would say like something I've found recently is that like, because a lot of people have asked me like, how can I improve my performance? And one of the ways, like a lot of people say like use a mirror to check your heights and check your stick angles and your technique. But I honestly have used a mirror more. Like early season, like I'll put in the headphones, I'll play the MP3 with the show when I'm learning the music. And I just kind of see how I naturally get into it. Cause I can only imagine how much that is amplified when I'm on the move and everything. But that's just, I would just say like, see how you naturally like get into it. Like, cause sometimes like usually a lot of people, if they enjoy music, they're going to hype naturally in some way, like some facial expression. So I would just say like, use the mirror to just look at yourself and see how you just naturally react to music. And then just build upon that. Cause you know, as everyone, you can see something you like, you see something you don't like. Oh, I don't look very good if I hype this way, you know, it kind of goes without saying. So.
Is it hard to maintain that level of performance? Like say 8 hours into a 10-hour rehearsal day?
I'd say it's hard to start after every, like, it's hard to start up every time you have a separate block. Like if we have 3 blocks over the weekend, I would say the first block, like depending on how early it is, it's like, if we're all feeling good, it's like really good to just go and we're getting good work done. The second block, it's like, we want to make sure we keep the momentum, even though we just stopped for an hour, you would just want to make sure you get back in. So I'd say it's harder just to start it back up, because even in one block, you could be doing battery warm up, transition to lot stuff, transition to setting up the floor stretching, and then ensemble. It's like, there's a lot of moments in between that when you can just get out of it, and then it's really hard to get back in. So.
Cool. So we'll take 1 or 2 more if you have any to the chat. But if not, it has been an hour. I'd like to thank you gentlemen here for coming. You guys are awesome.
How is Will so cool and awesome?
Yeah. Yes, you will.
Wait, who's that guy behind you, Will?
Wait. Will, where's Mike? Hold on.
Oh,
Michael.
Mike.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike's been coaching Will for years now.
Will might now know something.
Pass him on.
Somebody asked, sorry, I totally stepped on your toes, but I saw that. I didn't want to ignore it, but just really quick, someone asked, do you have to prepare a solo for Pulse auditions? Not really. I've never had to really play one.
Pulse auditions.
Okay, Connor, if you want to, like they're going to keep doing the auditions, right? But at least in my experience, like that's usually just the thing that comes up. Yes, you do have to do an individual. They'll have you just play stuff from the packet. And at the end, usually it's like, hey, if you have something prepared, you know, so it's cool if you want, and if you will have that time, but at the end of the day, like no one's really going to take your solo into account if you don't have like really, really strong fundamentals and good marching. You know, those are like the 2 big things that they look for at the auditions. So don't ride on, oh, this is my really cool solo, it's going to get me in, because the solo is not going to give you what gets you in. It's your individual quality in drumming and marching.
To answer your question, Vitor Rodriguez, we are planning to do this with every section. Yeah. Now, what are some of your favorite lot stories?
Ooh, I got one. This definitely okay, so there's a little bit that I have to preface with this, and I have a video. I've prepared a video. Let's see if I don't know if I can actually play this.
Is this a Pulse lot?
Yes. Okay, so this was the 2014 lot for prelims. I don't know if we even had semis in 2014. Did we? I don't really remember, but
yeah, we did.
We did. It wasn't finals, but okay. So this was the rehearsal right before our lot, before we were about to go. We're getting to the end of the show. We go upside down. We put the drums up. One of the snare drummers, Kevin Fujikake, He puts his drum up, and obviously we're going ham. It's the very end of the show. This was the end of our on the floor cam that we had. I don't know if it's gonna play.
No.
Audio is not really. That was maybe a like 9 or 10 foot drop.
It hurts. It hurts to watch.
It was so loud. We look at it. We immediately pick up the drum. We're like, "Is the drum okay? Are we good?" The drum is pristine. It's immaculate. It's not broken.
Nobody tell Mapes.
Huh?
Nobody tell Mapes. Nobody tell him at all.
No one told Paul.
Man. Is that the church?
Just complete. Yeah, this is at the church.
So that's not even like gym floor. That's like concrete tile.
Yeah, dude, it was bad. But like the drum was fine, and we were like so surprised. We're like, the guts hadn't even fallen off. It was still tuned nicely, and like everything it still sounded right. And we're like, oh my god, we got so lucky. So that day we go into the lot. It's not really cold, but it's super windy. We put our drums up on the stands, and I think the wind combined with us trying to like sneak through the stand so that we could like get our stuff and go set up for the lot while they're being tuned. They're upside down. I think it was Manny's drum. His like tipped over because someone knocked it off, and like. We're like, oh, it's probably fine. One of these drums just dropped from 10 feet up in the air. And we look at Manny's drum on the ground, and we see the metal hoop of the bottom rim is just completely split open. Oh my God. We have to replace the whole thing, like brand new head, brand new bottom rim, got to lube it up, do everything, like completely replace the whole thing. And we had like maybe 5 minutes before the lot was supposed to start. So we're all freaking out a little bit. But I just remember seeing that, and it wasn't even the fact that we were scared about that. It was like how comical that drum could not last a 2-foot drop, whereas Kevin's drum lasted like a 10-foot drop.
Yeah, Will.
So we're gonna go a little speed round here. Chase, what is it like being in a core WGI group based somewhere far from where you live?
Honestly, it's
Bay or native.
What was that?
I was just calling out the guy who asked the question.
It was a really cool experience for me because there's just a lot of different ideas, and meeting different people with different backgrounds was a lot of fun. And even after marching for 10 years, like I'm still being able to move out to California and do all that was very educational because I'm just learning so many different little nuanced ways of doing stuff and concepts that I hadn't necessarily heard of or thought of yet.
And now for anyone, how do you prepare for the visual aspect of the auditions?
Exercise.
Sit-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exercise, or something that someone said at Coates, one of the Viz staff, he said you can even like try to go into like a dance class, like a basic one. So especially for pole stuff with Rochelle, like that's gonna trip most people up, even in the ensemble. So try going to like a basic dance class.
I feel like a lot of people overlook the importance of the physical aspect of the sport and this whole activity. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is if you are serious about marching at top, then you need to incorporate some sort of cardio and lifting into your daily routine.
Yeah, exactly right. Because every single year that I've auditioned or held an audition, there's always like 1 or 2 people where on one day on like a Friday, it could be like, oh, this person's, their hands are awesome, they're totally in. And then the next day we see them march and it's like, oh, that person is totally not in, so that could totally make or break your entire audition. It's like, doesn't matter how smooth and buttery your hands are. If you can't play well on the move or you don't look good on the move, then it's going to be really tough audition for you.
I feel like at least with my experience, most of the make or break parts of auditions are like playing roles in box drill. Like,
yeah.
Or when they do box drill, but like smaller groups, it'll just be like Zach and then 2 people and just 3 of them like singled out doing box drill.
We did that a bunch this year.
Yeah.
Aurora Borealis, I believe the Met you're thinking about is called a long ranger.
There's also there's like the JBL Blue speakers, the little small ones. Those are also pretty portable.
The Lil Blue, as they're
Lil
called.
Blue.
Yeah.
Lil Boy Blues.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you to all people who followed. If you'd like to see more, we're going to do one of these every week with a different section. Follow. Stay tuned on the social media. Next week is going to be the Marimbas, hosted by Whitney Taylor. So that'll be exciting. Thank you, everybody. And we are signing off for the night. See you next week.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.